We are
Okay.
finally ready to go.
All right. Thanks so much, Kathy. Sorry, folks, for a little bit of tech kerfuffles here at the end of the day, but we'll get started here with today's Public Safety and Health Committee meeting. I will now officially call that to order. I will quickly, for the sake of time, run through the roll. Myself, Stacey Anderson is here. Mirta Becerra is here. John Contos is present. Gwen Jones is present, Julie Merritt is present, and Brian von Lossberg is present. I do believe that, oh, and Amber Sherrill. Thanks so much. We do have minutes from our last meeting, which was June 9th, where we approved the Missoula Fire Department's request for reimbursement for the paramedic program. Are there any changes to those minutes? Seeing no amendments or changes, those minutes will stand approved. Today we have one agenda item, which is going to be interviewing for the open positions on the local emergency planning committee, which I am the council representative to, and then we appoint 2 positions, a full-time position and an alternate. So we will have 4 interviews today. And I do believe our first interviewee is here. And I'm going to promote Sydney as a panelist so they can join the meeting. Sydney, are you there? Can you hear us? You should be able to unmute yourself and talk. We see your video. We're making progress. All right. Great. Well, welcome. So because we're in a Zoom format, we have found it easier if the chair just reads through the questions. They're the same questions for all the applicants. Normally, if we were in person, we would do a round robin, but unfortunately, you're all going to hear more of me speaking than most people care. But I will just run through the questions and then we'll have time for you to ask us any questions at the end. Does that sound okay for you?
Sounds good.
All right, wonderful. Well, the official purpose of the Local Emergency Planning Committee is to develop, train, and test hazardous substance and put together emergency response plans, develop procedures for regulated facilities to provide notification to the Local Emergency Planning Committee, which we use the acronym LEPC, in accordance with Title III of SARA, develop procedures for receiving and processing requests from the public under the community right to know provisions of Title III of SARA, provide for public notification of committee activities, and implement such other activities as may be legally required by the federal government, the State Emergency Response Commission, or the Board of County Commissioners, or the City Council. The ideal board member for LEPC would be identified as someone who is active in the community, someone who's interested in emergency planning, preparedness, response, and lastly, someone who attends meetings. The following questions are an effort to help us understand who the best applicant can be, and there are 6 questions. So I will start with the first one. Please take a moment to introduce yourself, including any prior service on local boards or commissions.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sydney Schweitzer. I have lived in Missoula for 17 years at this point. I have an MPA from the University of Montana, and I am a project management professional. I've been active not on any city commissions and boards, but I'm very active with Indivisible Montana and Missoula Rises. And I was on the United Way, that local citizen review board to determine the grants through one grant giving cycle.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Please describe what you know of the Local Emergency Planning Committee and or the Office of Emergency Management. And the follow-up, which I can repeat, are there any changes you would like to see?
So I read what's on the website and I read the statute that backs it up. So it looks like it's about the Superfund planning. That the whole thing was started after the Bhopal, the toxic factory explosion in Bhopal years ago. So it would be an effort to have a hazardous emergency response plan for Missoula County. And I guess I don't know what I'd like to change about it because I read the last 4 meetings worth of minutes, but I don't believe that I know enough right this minute to tell you what I'd like to change. I think that in order to know what to change, you have to actually be a participant. Perhaps communication. As a citizen, I don't really see much communication or visibility from this, and that's something potentially that maybe should be addressed.
Great, sounds good. Third question, what suitable experience, knowledge, or perspective can you bring to the local emergency planning committee?
Well, like I said, I am a project manager. I work for a federal contractor. I handle a portfolio projects and programs. My current portfolio is about 15 projects, somewhere between $15 and $20 million is what I'm managing. I do project management, project planning, contingency planning for a living. When I was in the Army, in the Wayback Machine, I was the designated CBRN, chemical, biological, nuclear response officer. That was, really long time ago, so it was a little more primitive than it is now, but the same sort of thing. I used to work for the Department of Transportation in Minnesota, also in the Wayback Machine, so I'm kind of familiar with highways, trucking regulations, some railroad, things like that. But mostly I'm a contingency planner and a project manager. And I get stuff done and I communicate.
Great. Well, those are important skills. Sorry to interrupt the questioning, but really quick, it does appear that Heidi West has joined the meeting, so I'd like to reflect that. These are we're being very snappy with our time today. So the last two questions are, will you have time for the demands of this position? Currently, the meetings are held quarterly, and on a Tuesday from 1:30 to 3. There are a number of subcommittees. There's packets of information to review and research that might be required prior to the meeting. So we are currently meeting on Zoom, but I do imagine at some point in time we'll be back to in-person meetings at the county courthouse. So does that seem compatible with your schedule to be able to participate in those meetings?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I work for a federal contractor. I do live and work in Missoula. I travel infrequently. I'm able to plan around it. So my time is, I'm salaried. As long as my customers are happy and I get my work done, if I need to step out for a meeting, then I cleared it with HR and corporate counsel as well. There are no difficulties with me taking time to do this.
Wonderful. Great. Well, finally, appreciate you answering the questions thus far. Is there anything that you would like to tell us that we haven't come up in the questions previously answered, or that you want us to know as we take into consideration these filling this position?
Sure. I guess what you need to know about me is that I actually am a contingency planner. I just am by nature. Project manager is the job I have because that's how I roll. At my house, when the pandemic hit, we didn't have to go shopping. We were set. It's not like, so we're not like crazy preppers that live on the hill, right? But we are prepared. When I was in the Army in Germany, they told us that we had to be prepared to hunker down for 6 weeks and not move. Now I can't stay for 6 weeks in my house, but I can stay for a couple of weeks. I rotate things in and out, keep track of that. When we camp, I have checklists, so I know this is what we have to pack, this is what we have to do, this is when we set up, when we break down. So it's just kind of checklist and contingency planning is how I roll. I think this is a really important topic. One of the things to keep track of, is we have the railroad tracks that run right through the top of town there, the north side, and that and the freeway. And it gives us the potential to have some fairly awkward industrial incidents. We could have something go wrong with the train. We could have a spill. We could have a tanker spill. We have the Clark Fork River. We have sensitive environmental things all around us. So we have the potential to have a pretty serious incident just because life is going on around us. Nothing because we did, but the train derails, somebody drives into the river. We don't need an extraneous attack. We just need, 5 or 6 things to go wrong one day and we have to deal with it. I don't know that the people of Missoula County and the city of Missoula are prepared for that in any way. You could sort of see that when we had the fires in the last few years, that people really aren't prepared for what to do in emergency. They don't even know where to look for the information. So I think that's one of the things that we could do is do a better job of making sure people know there is emergency planning. Here's where you go to look. Here's how we get information out. Just really basic stuff like that. Certainly the people I know, they're on Facebook, but they don't really follow necessarily the things that would give them the information. People in Missoula don't really use Twitter. So you have to find some other way to get a hold of them. People, millennials and zennials, they don't even watch TV, right? So we can't just pop up an emergency broadcast on the television. They don't even watch TV. So we have to find some other ways to communicate this to people and reach it to them and let them know what's going on, in a timely fashion, in a way that would help them. And it doesn't have to be burdensome, right? If you do this properly, then it's not burdensome. It's not a burden on government. It's not a burden on industry. It's not a burden on anybody. It's just, we all know what's going on. We all know what to do. Boom.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. Yes, I think pandemic thought. Oh,
Madam
yes.
Chair, I just want to point out, I'm not sure that you asked question number 4, although she might have answered it in the last answer, but I just wanted to point that out. I think that might have gotten skipped.
You are correct, Ms. Jones. Thank you so much. Sorry, I jumped questions when I acknowledged Ms. West had joined the meeting. So that's Ms. Jones, keeping us on task and in compliance. So sorry, if you don't mind, we'll ask this question. What do you see as the most critical issues concerning emergency planning, preparedness, and response that confront Missoula? So I want to make sure that question's on the record, but I do feel like you did have sort of expanded upon that in your answers, but if there's anything specific that comes to mind, happy to hear.
I mean, I think one of probably the most serious thing that faces us, frankly, is wildfire. And how the city would respond to that. Now, that's not the purview of this committee. This committee is more about Superfund related things. But again, like I said, with the trains that go through, coal trains could be propane, could be fuel oil. There was that town in Canada where a train derailed and exploded, and they incinerated the whole town. So that's kind of a worst case scenario, right? We've got the Clark Fork. Things can spill, trucks could spill. When they were pulling the mega loads through, there was a potential for environmental problems with that as well. It could have been Superfund related or just environmental. If that had gone into the Clark Fork, that would have been a rather major issue. The planes that went into the river up by Alberton Gorge, these things happen to us, and we need to be able to respond.
Great. Well, appreciate your thoroughness on that question, and sorry if I threw you off by missing that as I asked them. So
no worries.
All right. Well, any questions from council members? And we try to make sure that we ask questions that we can then ask to the other members to keep it fair. Is there anything that council members would like to ask? All right. Do want to ask one thing. So we have 2 positions that we can appoint for the local emergency planning committee. We have one full-time and one alternate. There isn't really anything that this committee votes on. So other than chair, vice chair of the committee itself, would you be okay, or would you be open to accepting an alternate position if that is what you're appointed for?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, we are, the plan for today is to finish the interviews, and then we will make a motion, and the clerk's office will circle back with you as we conclude the process.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to tell you, one of the things I've done for my job is, FEMA has a series of certifications and classes and things you can take online and take the test. I've got, I think, of the first 4 of those completed just as part of my job.
Oh, great.
The hazardous materials transportation and, what's a hazardous material, those first 4 classes.
Great. Excellent piece to know. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. Thank you for your interest and your involvement in the Missoula community, and we'll be back in touch.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you. All right. Well, even though we started a couple minutes late, we have been able to kind of get ourselves back on time. Our next, okay, oopsie. Okay, there we go. I think I did that. Our next interview person is here, and it's Ari Cornelius. I believe you should be able to join us. All right. Hello.
Yes. Hi, how are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm great, thanks.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll just move right on into the next interview. Normally we go, I think last time you interviewed, we were in person and we all went around in a circle.
Yes.
But to make it easy for Zoom, because the tiles like to move around, I'll just be reading through the questions. So we'll get started. Quickly, and you know this because you're on the local emergency planning committee, but for the public that's listening in, the purpose of the local emergency planning committee, or LEPC as we call it, is to develop, train, and test hazardous substance emergency response plans, develop procedures for regulated facilities to provide notification to the LEPC in accordance with Title III of SARA, develop procedures for receiving and processing requests from the public under the community right to know provisions of Title III of SARA, provide the public notification of committee activities, implement such other activities that may be legally required by the federal government and the State Emergency Response Committee, the Board of County Commissioners, and the City Council. The ideal member of the LEPC would be identified as someone who is active in the community, someone who's interested in emergency planning, preparedness, and response, and lastly, someone who attends meetings. Following questions are to help us understand who would be the best candidate. So we have a series of 6 questions that we'll ask, and we'll get going. Is that okay? Oh, I think you want. Okay, so I'll start with the first question. Please take a moment and introduce yourself. Include any prior service on local boards and commissions.
No. Okay. Sorry. Playing with my mute. I think you can hear me now. Oh, now I can't hear you.
Oh, nope. Sorry. I was on mute.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, we're good. We can
Okay.
hear you. You're on camera. Go. The floor is
Okay.
yours.
Perfect. I think the question was any experience on any boards or commissions. I served on the local emergency planning committee for most of the last term. I don't remember who the gentleman was, but he was on the committee, stepped out, and then I was nominated to his position. Outside of that, no formal experience. For me, it's all been volunteer experience with different groups like Muscular Dystrophy Association. But yeah, no formal.
Okay, and the first part of the question was, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. So my name is Ari Cornelius. I live in Missoula here. I work for you all as a firefighter from Missoula Fire Department. October will be 13 years. Prior to that, I was a wildland firefighter, finishing up as a smoke jumper before I came to work for the city of Missoula. I have got a wife and I've got 2 kids. I live in the city limits, obviously. And yeah, I have got a lot of experience in incident management. I've got a lot of experience in operations. I've served on Missoula Fire Department's regional hazmat team as a technician level specialist in hazmat. I currently am not on any specialty teams as I'm trying to raise 2 kids. What else can I tell you guys? I currently am working on my task force leader level of operational leadership in incident management. I am a member of our all hazards incident management team for the county. And yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for that. And thank you to our service for your service to our community. Please describe what you know of the local emergency planning committee and or the Office of Emergency Management. And are there any changes you would like to see?
My knowledge of the Office of Emergency Management and the LEPC are through my attendance there for the last 4 years. One of my fire chiefs, Gordy Hughes, was a chairman. So I've had quite a few conversations with him in regards to the mission of the LEPC and the Office of Emergency Management. On more of a day-to-day operations level, I served in the Office of Emergency Management in the EOC last year during our COVID incident management team response. What I know about the LEPC is kind of the mission statement that you were reading to start this interview off. More of the community right to know stuff with hazardous materials in the local community. And can you tell me the second part of that or the rest of that question, Stacy? Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So it was what do you know and what changes would you like to see?
What? Okay, so what
Pretty much
changes? Yeah, I'd love to see a little more like maybe direction from the city council, because I know that there's now a city councilor that sits in on the LEPC meetings. Yes, yeah, and like it might be nice like if there was specific feedback that the city council was looking for, or if there was some topics that the council would like brought up. And I know that I've seen you bring some issues to the forefront. I feel like a kind of a passive observer in there, but that's okay too. Just kind of more like what the city would like to see, or especially the city council would like to see out of the city citizen representative sitting on that board.
Yes, that's great feedback. I appreciate that. So, third question is, what suitable experience, knowledge, or perspective can you bring to the LEPC?
All right, so I think I started to get into this and then backed off of it a little bit. So yeah, I have a lot of operations experience. I serve in the day-to-day of Missoula's emergency response. That can include hazmat. It doesn't happen often in Missoula. I would say, for instance, I was on a hazmat response in Superior last spring, but in the city limits, they're pretty minimal. But I do have a working relationship with our Fire Prevention Bureau, and they are the people that do all of our pre-planned and our hazard analysis for us. So they find target hazards in buildings, facilities. They know what chemicals are in there, as well as the Office of Emergency Management. So there's quite a bit of easily accessible resources for me to be in touch with that stuff. So if I don't know the answer to a question, or if I don't know, so we get into buildings all the time in my day job doing, say, a fire alarm, and we're in there, or a new building is being built and it's being permitted. So we're doing a walkthrough as a crew to look for target hazards for ourselves. So I guess like just as much as the community wants to know where these target hazards are, we want to know where they're at even more in case that building's on fire or some other emergency happens in there. So I guess I'm kind of the eyes and the ears of potentially the LEPC, and seeing some of these things and identifying them if they're not already known, or double checking to see that they are already known. On top of that, I took a 70-hour toxic medic class last spring, and that's to deal with emergency medical response in the event that our public or fellow firefighters are exposed to some chemical and a hazardous materials response, or just our day-to-day structure fires with smoke inhalation, things like that. I served on the incident management team for the COVID response for the Emergency Operations Center, COVID vaccines. I went to California twice on a mutual aid compact that's taking fire crews down to California. Spent a month down there as a task force leader. I was part of the initial response to the Mount Sentinel wildfire last summer. So all of this is to say that I'm kind of in like boots on the ground, kind of the guy showing up to these responses. And yeah, I mean, like some other stuff too, that like the city that we're dealing with right now, I just took a 40-hour CIT training. So you could say that this LEPC is maybe a little more focused on hazardous materials, but there's a lot of other emergencies that are happening in our community. Some of those are wildfires, but some of them are homeless population and the problems that they're presenting and some of the issues that we're facing as a community. So I feel like I'm really involved like in kind of this like holistic approach, like from CIT to incident management to being a paramedic for the fire department.
All right. Well, that was a lot of really great stuff. Thanks so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
So question number 4 is, what do you see as the most critical issue concerning emergency planning, preparedness, and response that confronts Missoula?
I think there's a few that scare me anyways. And one of the big ones is having train coming through town. A lot of that product is known by the train, but it's not known by the community until it's here. So I guess like the unknown or the surprise that we might get. Everybody can remember Alberton chlorine spill. There's some other stuff that has happened around here. But for me, that's the scariest for sure, is the big unknown chemical that comes into our community and somehow has an issue, either overturns or a fire and explosion, followed up by wildland fires. and potential like water shortage stuff coming up if we don't see any changes. But I'm just looking at the record heat wave that's coming our way right now, and I'm looking at the hillsides and expecting to have a long, hot, smoky summer. So yes, this product coming through on the train and wildland fires.
Great, thanks for that. Final two questions. What will you have time for the demands of this positions? Meetings are held quarterly on a Tuesday from 1:30 to 3, and there may be subcommittees, packets of information to review, and research required of the board members. Currently, we're meeting via Zoom, but I do expect at some point we will go back in person. And will you be able to make those meetings?
Yes, I can make those meetings. I've made probably 80% or better in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. The Zoom is actually kind of nice because you can attend from anywhere. So that actually has been helpful, especially with kids at home. But yeah, it's not a problem at all. And in fact, my fire chiefs have been good at letting me take a fire engine down there and attend the meeting when they're in person if I'm on shift. So yes.
Great, thank you. Well, I know there's been good participation from the fire department in general at the LEPC, so that's good. The final question is there anything you would like to tell us that hasn't been brought up so far that you think is pertinent for us to consider?
I don't think so. My heart rate finally slowed down. I thought this was going to be easier in on Zoom, but it's not. So I just want to say thank you guys for your time. I don't have any like ulterior motives or any like really big reasons to serve on this committee other than to maybe get some credit for being there anyways. And then, that one of the first questions you asked me was what committee experience do you have? And this is one way I can get it. So I look forward to the opportunity, and I just wanted to say thank you guys for your time today.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And yes, like you said, you've already been serving on this committee. We have 2 positions to appoint. One of them is a full member and one's an alternate. You have served in the alternate position prior. So if asked, would you be willing to continue to serve in the alternate position?
I'd be happy to serve in either position.
Okay.
Or not,
great.
or not at all. I'll keep going. It doesn't matter. So yeah. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. You did great on the Zoom interview. We had no idea. That is all. So the rest of the process is that we will be conducting the remainder of the interviews today, and then we'll be making a motion, and the clerk's office will be back in touch to let you know our decision.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thanks so much. Yes. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Thanks. Okay, great. Well, that is 2 of our 4 interviews have been completed. We are waiting for our 4:05 interviewee, Mr. Bauer, to join us. So we will give him a couple more minutes to join. So let's see here. Keep an eye out for him. Okay, if everyone wants to just refill their afternoon coffee or whatever you need, we'll stand adjourned for 2 minutes or so, just until Mr. Bauer, who was scheduled at 4:05, but we've all had those moments of technical difficulty getting on Zoom, so we'll give him a few more minutes to join us. All right, fellow committee members, we're going to give Mr. Bauer, 2 more minutes. He was scheduled at 4:05, and so we'll give till 4:10 for him to join in case he's having any technical difficulties. Okay, folks, I just chatted with the city clerk to confirm that Mr. Bauer had received the invitation to join us today, and he emailed back and said he had. So not quite sure why he hasn't yet joined us, but for the applicant who was scheduled at 4:20 to interview is here. So we're actually going to go ahead and just move on with the interviews, interview Mr. Larson for this position, and then if Mr. Bauer does join us, then we will just swap interview times, but just want to continue to keep things rolling. So we are going to, Mr. Larson, you should be, I just admitted you into the meeting.
Hello.
If you could, great. Do you have a camera function available?
Yeah, I do.
Great.
Do we need that turned on?
Well, normally we do these interviews in person, so the other applicants have turned on their, it's just like a requirement, but it has been practiced protocol thus far.
Okay, let's do it. Hello,
Great.
This is Matt Larson. Nice to see you, City Council.
Greetings. All right. Well, normally when we do these interviews in person, we go around the circle and ask these questions, but for ease of Zoom, we will just have the committee chair, myself, go through and ask the questions. So before we ask the questions, we just kind of read a quick little blurb about the Local Emergency Planning Committee. So the official purpose of the Local Emergency Planning Committee is to develop, train, and test hazardous substance emergency response plans, develop procedures for regulated facilities to provide notifications to the Local Emergency Planning Committee, which we use the acronym LEPC, in accordance to Title III of SARA. Develop procedures for receiving and processing requests from the public under the community right to know provision of Title III of SARA, and provide for public notification of committee activities. Implement such other activities that may be legally required by the federal government, the State Emergency Response Commission, the Board of County Commissioners, and the City Council. An ideal board member of the LEPC is identified as someone who is active in the community, someone who's interested in emergency planning, preparedness, and response, and lastly, someone who is able to attend the meetings. The following 6 questions are here to help us process and understand which applicant best meets the qualifications. So we have 6 questions we'll get through, and without giving you questions, we'll get started. Okay. Please take a moment and introduce yourself, including any prior service on local boards and commissions.
I have no prior service on local boards and commissions, but my name is Mats Larson. I'm a lifetime resident, 5th generation Montanan from the Bitterroot Valley. Went to high school at Hellgate High School. I then attended technology school in Orlando, Florida, Full Sail, and lived in Chicago and LA as a recording engineer, working primarily as a recording engineer. And that's my brief intro. I know you all very well, and I see you all frequently on these Zoom meetings. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm, basically just very interested in the ongoings of the community, as you know, and also how this intersects with what we are allowed to see as a community, and what the government of the city and the county is doing actively to protect us.
Okay, great. The next question is, please describe what you know of the Local Emergency Planning Committee and/or the Office of Emergency Management. And the second part to that is, are there any changes that you would like to see?
As far as I understand it, this is a intercooperative effort between the city. So that would be the city and county police department, the sheriff, as well as the fire departments, the rural fire departments, maybe too. But it's basically just a whole network of everything, or everyone and every department that would respond during an emergency. Some changes I'd like to see. I'd like to see a more comprehensive plan for the pandemic. I feel like, that was a hard thing to divine out of thin air, but I do recall a lot of people talking about it in March and prior, when we actually had in-person meetings with the city council. There was a lot of discussion about how we could prepare for this. And I wasn't necessarily following this committee at that point, and I'm sure that it was discussed. But some other changes I would like to see is more of a focus on the technological side and infrastructure side of the city and county, specifically having to do with hacking. I believe that because the city owns a city water company and many other pieces of infrastructure, we should be seriously focusing on this. And it is a big deal, as you know. In the last few months, we've seen many ransomware attacks across the country, including the pipeline attack. So that's a big thing, and I'm kind of scared for Missoula, because through my various different information requests using the right to know, like I requested the downtown shooter event, and on that radio traffic, you can hear one of the police officers asking for the 3 video cameras that are facing the west side of the building on the courthouse, which oversee everything. But yet, when I, a member of the public who has a right to know, request that footage, it's gone. It's nowhere. No one can find it. That's alarming. So I'd like changes there. I'd like a more forthcoming county and city government that can show this stuff to the public so we can actually maybe have a suspect for this downtown shooter scenario, as opposed to just, I don't know, stuff vanishing into thin air.
Okay. Moving on to the next question is, what suitable experience, knowledge, or perspective can you bring to the local emergency planning committee?
Well, I'm pretty well versed with the information and the police's own handbook and policy. I've done some policy complaints and investigated further into, MPD. I've also figured out and done some information requests that resulted in like a mask protocol actually being followed at the county jail. And there's more. I'm very well versed in requesting the information and actually doing the due diligence of reading the handbooks and reading the manuals and reading all the information that's out there that's at least available to me. I can't say for the information that has not been made available to me yet. So that's my experience. I know a lot of EMTs. I know a lot of wildland firefighters, and I'm happy to pull from my vast network of people to complete any task that this committee might ask of me.
Great, thanks so much. Question number 4 is, what do you see as the most crucial issue concerning emergency planning, preparedness, and response that confronts Missoula right now?
I'd say there's a few. Like I mentioned before, I think the infrastructure and hacking issue is a big one. And it really is alarming when, the county information officer doesn't have the camera footage from the county courthouse. I have family members that work in government, and they work in that courthouse, and that's very alarming to me. So I want to see changes across the board with how much of the public information is shared with the public, especially regarding planning. Because if the public doesn't know anything, then they aren't going to react as you wish them to. The other big issue, I think, is updating the background checks for security contractors that work for the city and county. I've personally had some weird encounters at City Hall with one, and requested to be a part of that RFQ and have received no response from the city. So I'd like, just more forthcoming delivery of public information in accordance to Title III SARA. Also, another thing, like I said, was the pandemic planning. I mean, you can expect that something like this may happen again. We also have the Rocky Mountain Virus Lab just south of us. And that's super relevant as it's being discussed whether or not this pandemic started and originated from a lab similar to that one, just based in China. Those are of course, I heard somebody else mention earlier wildfires. I think we have a pretty competent fire department, and the smoke jumper base is based out of here. We deal with forest fires, regularly. So I don't have that big of a concern for that. Of course, it is a concern as we expand this city and build further into the forest. But as it is now, I think those are my main concerns: hacking, background checks of contractors whom work for the city and the county, just basic pandemic planning. Because not issuing masks in the county jail until November is a big deal, and it risks the entire health of the entire public of this community. Thank you.
All right. The 5th question is, will you have the time for the demands of this position? The meetings of the local emergency planning committee are held quarterly, usually on a Tuesday, from 1:30 to 3. There may be subcommittees, packets of information to review, or research required of committee members. Currently, we are meeting via Zoom, but I do expect that we will be back in person sometime this fall for our next quarter meeting. Are you able to commit to attending and being prepared for those committee meetings if you select it?
I believe so. It's no problem to attend via Zoom, and I look forward to when the city and the county open back up into in-person hybrid meetings, as I've been asking for those since last year. So yes, I very much do have the time to attend these. I very much do have the capacity to research and read the manuals and whatever else is included in the materials that are given to me.
Great. And the final question, is there anything else that you would like us to know that is pertinent to your selection on the local emergency planning committee?
Yeah, I think that I am a very familiar face or voice to you all. And I often speak in city council regarding over expenditures by the police department. So I know very much I am a contentious or not well liked person by the members of city council, just based off of the facts. But I think that's why I could be very valuable to you, because if I stamp and approve these things on this council or on this committee, then you can hang your hat on that, because I'm not an easy person to get stuff by. And I think that, yeah, I might not be the most well-liked by you all, but I think that's actually an advantage when we're talking about citizen oversight.
Okay, great. There are two positions of it open on the local emergency planning committee. One of them is an alternate. There is very few things that this board actually votes on. But if you are appointed, would you be okay with filling the alternate position?
Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, that concludes the remainder of our interviews. Thank you for applying and expressing your interest. We will, the city's clerk's office will be in touch to let you know the rest of the process of who was selected.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Same to you.
Bye.
Okay. So it does appear as though Mr. Bauer is not going to be joining us. And I have not had any communications from the clerk's office that he has reached out saying that he wasn't able to attend. So I see Miss Merritt has her hand up, and yes, Miss Merritt.
If I can turn my mute off, I will just go ahead and make a motion if the chair believes that is appropriate.
Yes, I think that I feel comfortable moving forward with the selection of this committee appointments.
So the motion that I would like to make is to appoint Ari, am I pronouncing his name right? Mm-hmm. Cornelius to the regular position and Sydney Schweitzer to the alternate position.
Great. Well, that motion is in order. We will now, there's a motion on the floor. We will have discussion on the motion if there is any. Got hands popping up. All right, great. Miss Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for that motion, Julie. I will support that motion. I think that Ari certainly has shown his commitment to this already. He has great experience in this area. I think he's going to be a real asset and great voice on it. And I like that he is a firefighter and understands emergency response. Excuse me. Also, Sydney, I think that she's got project management experience. It sounds like some big projects and a number of projects going at once. I like that. I think that her armed service contingency planning piece, I think, is going to be a real asset to that, to the board. So I'm happy to support Julie's motion.
Great, thank you. Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. I plan to support that motion as well. Thanks, Julie. I agree with the comments. One thing that struck me in particular from Ms. Schweitzer's answers was the bit about sort of better communication. I happen to know for a fact that we do indeed have spills in the rail yard. We have some really good planning around those, and I know the fire department has participated in the past in some specialized training around I think it's a particular sort of oil fire and such. And so that's all good, but it highlights some of her comments, I think, highlight the need for greater communication around what we're prepared to do. So that really resonated with me, but I think both excellent candidates based on experience and other attributes.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Von Lossberg. Ms. Cheryl, Ms. Jones.
Thank you. I won't repeat what's already been said, but I agree with everything in terms of these two candidates, Ari Cornelius and Sydney Schweitzer. And I just wanted to note, Ms. Schweitzer seems to have an excellent set of skills to bring to this, and the way she approaches things, very no nonsense, very organized. She just really brings some great things to the table that I think is exactly what this committee looks for on this board. So I'm in favor of the motion.
Great, thank you. Mr. Contos. Did we lose you? Mr. Contos, you're on mute.
Nothing like talking to the air. Yeah, I was impressed with both of them. A lot of experience. I would prefer Mrs. Schweitzer over the other. I liked her military background, the discipline behind that. She seems very confident in what she knows. And I like the fact that she's a little bit older too.
Great, thank you for that, Mr. Contos. And Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. I won't repeat what has been said, but I think this is a great slate of candidates, and individually, they each bring really impressive backgrounds. But I think that combination too, having someone with Ari's experience and the other candidates' background is just a really great addition to that committee. So happy to support the motion.
Great, thank you, Ms. Becerra. I agree with what has been said. I do want to point out that previously, when we appointed positions, we had appointed Mr. Cornelius to the alternate position. He has now reapplied, so I support the motion of basically promoting him to the regular position and then asking Ms. Schweitzer to fill in the alternate position. Do note that there is. I do think that both the alternate and regular positions have, given that I serve on that committee, full ability to participate, and there are very few things that this committee votes on. It is more of an informational committee. So I just wanted to put that on the record. So there just seems to be no more hands up for council members. We currently have no one in the audience, and nothing from the clerk. So I feel comfortable moving forward with a vote on the motion made by Ms. Merritt. So Kathy, do you want to go ahead and call the vote?
I'd be happy to.
All right.
Stacey Anderson.
Yes.
John Contos.
Did we lose John?
John Contos.
Sorry, I missed something. I had to grab a quick call. Where are we at?
We were taking a vote.
Okay.
So the motion was to have
Ms. Merritt's motion to appoint Ari Cornelius to the regular position and Sydney Schweitzer to the alternate position.
Okay, thank you. No?
Becerra,
Yes.
Gwen Jones,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Amber, Cheryl.
Yes. Yes.
Brian Lossberg,
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
Motion is 7-1. Motion is passed.
Great, thanks so much. Mr. Contos, do you want this on committee reports or are you okay with this being on the consent agenda?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, well, great. Well, that motion carries. It will be on the consent agenda on Monday evening. That concludes a very long day of committee meetings. And with that, I will adjourn that today is Public Safety and Health Committee meeting. Thank you for your service and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.